Welcome. You've stumbled upon Miss Nightmare's channel, a place where shadows dance and where puppets whisper. Tonight's tale, it's a story about a marionette, a demented one. Its strings hold more than just thread. They hold fear itself. This marionette, it wasn't always this way. It was once a child's toy, a symbol of innocence, but something happened, something dark, something twisted. Now, it's a vessel of terror. Its painted smile hides a sinister truth. Are you brave enough to hear its story? This isn't for the faint of heart. This is a descent into madness, into the depths of horror. Proceed with caution. You might not like what you find, but you won't be able to look away. That's the power of the Demented Marionette. It pulls you in, just like its strings. Every puppet has a master. This one, his name was Edgar, a solitary man haunted by his past. He was once a renowned puppeteer, beloved by children. But tragedy struck. A fire, his family gone, consumed by the flames. Edgar disappeared, vanished into the shadows. Years passed. He resurfaced, a changed man. His eyes, once full of life, were now hollow, empty, except when he looked at his marionettes. Then, a spark, a flicker of something else, something unsettling. He built a new stage, a traveling one. He performed in small towns, desolate places. His puppets? They were different now, twisted, grotesque. But people flocked to see them, drawn to the darkness, to the macabre. Edgar never spoke about the fire, about his family, but his marionettes? They whispered his secrets. Their movements, erratic, their painted smiles, menacing. There was a darkness to his shows now, a palpable terror that clung to the air. Among his troupe, one marionette stood out, the Demented Marionette. It was taller than the others, more lifelike. Its eyes, two crimson orbs, seemed to follow you, watch your every move. People swore it moved on its own, that its strings twitched even when Edgar wasn't near. Its costume was different too, tattered clothes, resembling a child's pajamas, a chilling detail that sent shivers down your spine. The Demented Marionette was always the star of the show, its movements jerky and unnatural, its presence unsettling. It commanded your attention, held you captive. Edgar would manipulate its strings with an almost frantic energy, as if possessed. The Demented Marionette would dance and twirl, its painted smile never faltering. But behind those painted eyes, you could sense something else, a malevolence, a hunger. It was as if the puppet was feeding off the audience's fear. Whispers spread amongst the townsfolk, rumors of the puppet being cursed, haunted. Some even said it was possessed by the spirits of Edgar's family, consumed by the fire that took them, their souls trapped within the wooden frame, seeking revenge. The townsfolk whispered about Edgar, about the fire. They said he made a deal with a dark entity to bring his puppets to life in exchange for something precious, something irreplaceable, their souls. His shows became more frequent, more intense, the Demented Marionette more lifelike, its movements smoother, more human. It was as if it was learning, evolving, becoming something more than just a puppet. People started to notice. The Demented Marionette would mimic the movements of the audience, their laughter, their gasps of fear. It was as if it was mocking them, toying with them. The line between puppet and reality was blurring. Edgar himself seemed to be deteriorating. His eyes sunken, his skin pale and drawn. He was like a husk of a man, controlled by the very thing he created. The Demented Marionette had become his master, and it was hungry for more than just fear. Strange things began to happen in the towns Edgar visited. Objects would move on their own. Whispers would echo in the dead of night. Children's toys would come to life, dancing and singing long after their batteries had died. People claimed to see the Demented Marionette in their dreams, its crimson eyes burning into their souls. They would wake up in a cold sweat, the feeling of dread clinging to them like a shroud. The puppet's presence lingered long after the nightmare had ended. Animals were particularly sensitive to the Demented Marionette's presence. Dogs would bark and howl at seemingly nothing. Cats would hiss and arch their backs. Birds would take flight in a flurry of feathers and panicked screeches. It was as if they could sense the darkness that surrounded the puppet. The townsfolk, once drawn to the macabre allure of Edgar's shows, now lived in fear. They avoided the traveling stage. They kept their children indoors. They whispered prayers for protection. But the Demented Marionette's influence was spreading. It was seeping into their lives, poisoning their dreams. The eyes, the Demented Marionette's eyes, they were the windows to its soul, or rather, the lack thereof. They were bottomless pits of darkness, reflecting the terror of all who dared to gaze upon them. Those who looked into the Demented Marionette's eyes claimed to see things, horrible things, their deepest fears, their darkest secrets. The puppet's gaze was a curse, a violation of the soul. It stripped away your defenses, exposed your vulnerabilities. Some fainted dead away, their minds unable to comprehend the horrors they had witnessed. Others were driven mad, their sanity shattered by the puppet's malevolent gaze. They would babble incoherently about strings and fire, about a deal made in the shadows. The Demented Marionette's eyes were a weapon, a tool of torment. They were the embodiment of Edgar's pain, his loss, his descent into madness. And they were focused on the world, spreading fear and despair wherever they looked. Despite the fear, the dread, the whispers, Edgar continued his shows, each performance more chilling than the last. The Demented Marionette, the star attraction, danced on its strings, a puppet master of terror. The audience dwindled. Only the bravest, or perhaps the most foolish, dared to attend. Those who craved a glimpse into the abyss, who sought a thrill from the touch of fear. They would get more than they bargained for. The Demented Marionette's performance was a spectacle of horror. It would contort its body into impossible positions, its wooden limbs creaking and groaning under the strain. Its painted smile would widen into a grotesque grin, mocking the audience's terror. Edgar, a shadow of his former self, manipulated the strings with detached precision, his eyes, hollow and lifeless, never leaving the puppet. He was a prisoner of his own creation, bound to the Demented Marionette by a dark pact. The climax of Edgar's final show. The Demented Marionette writhed on its strings, a frenzy of movement. The audience watched in horrified fascination. This was more than a puppet show. This was a ritual. Suddenly, silence. The Demented Marionette went still, its crimson eyes fixed on Edgar. He froze, a look of terror washing over his face. He dropped the strings. The Demented Marionette fell to the stage, lifeless. Edgar stumbled back, his eyes wide with fear. He reached out a trembling hand towards the fallen puppet as if to wake it. But it was too late. The Demented Marionette was gone. And something was different. The air felt lighter. The oppressive darkness had lifted. Edgar collapsed to his knees. A hollow sob escaped his lips. He had been freed from his pact. But at what cost? The Demented Marionette had taken its final bow. And with it, it had taken a part of Edgar's soul. The stage was empty. The audience sat in stunned silence. What had they just witnessed? Was it real? Or had the Demented Marionette's magic woven a spell on their minds? Edgar was never seen again. Some say he wandered into the wilderness, haunted by the memory of the Demented Marionette. Others believe he was consumed by the very darkness he had unleashed, his soul forever bound to the puppets. The Demented Marionette was gone, vanished without a trace. But the legend lived on, whispered in hushed tones, a cautionary tale about the dangers of dabbling in the dark arts, a reminder that some things are best left undisturbed. The Demented Marionette may be gone, but its influence lingers, a shadow in the corner of your eye, a whisper in the dead of night, a reminder that some toys are not meant to be played with. Did you like that tale? Did it chill you to your bones? There's more where that came from. Subscribe to Miss Nightmare's channel for more stories that will keep you up at night. We delve into the darkness, explore the shadows of your mind. Our tales will leave you breathless, terrified, but you won't be able to look away. That's the power of horror. It grips you, holds you captive. Join us, if you dare, but be warned. Once you enter the world of Miss Nightmare, you may never escape. The darkness has a way of clinging to you, haunting your waking moments, invading your dreams. Sweet dreams.